A few months ago, I directed my team at the White House to look into any new actions I can take to help reduce gun violence. And on Monday, I'll meet with our Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, to discuss our options.
President Obama, in his weekly address on his plan to take executive action on gun control, likely as soon as this week. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Radio talk show host Laura Ingraham, Susan Page of USA Today, head of Heritage Action for America, Michael Needham, and USA Today columnist Kirsten Powers. Happy New Year to all of you. We ask you for questions for the panel, and we got one on, actually a bunch, but like this one on Facebook from Jack Abatiello. He writes, do you think Congress will stand up to Obama's lawless executive action on gun control, or will we have to vote out the GOP leadership this year? Laura, how do you answer, Jack, both about the president's executive actions and also about what, if anything, congressional Republicans can do?
Article 1 of the Constitution gives Congress the power to enact laws. The president has abused this power. Republicans have largely allowed him to do so. On this issue, given where the Republican Party, the Republican voters are, if the Republicans do not stand up to this in a meaningful and smart way with facts, debunking all the lies, the gun show loopholes, Jeb Bush was right about that. If they do not do that, I think you will not be able to underestimate the wrath of the American voter next November in a lot of the key Senate races, which I know we've talked about before on the show. This is an issue about liberty and about law-abiding gun owners stopping crime, being allowed to live in freedom. You want to give a gift of a gun to a son. Now the federal government wants to create perhaps a national database which would allow these gun control legislation through executive action to be meaningful. They would need a national database for gun owners. 300 million guns in the United States today. Look at what Texas did at the end of the year. They have a new pro-Second Amendment legislative regime in place in Texas. Similarly, in Florida, they're considering the same concealed carry law. So I think the president is trying to overreach in his last year in Congress.
But what I heard you say is stand up, and then you said, well, they should, have facts or hearings. Is there any way they can stop him?
Well, they're going to have to go to the courts. I mean, and we know the courts now are very unreliable on some of these constitutional issues. And I think it has to become a campaign issue for 2016.
So
not
in
just
terms
on the
of Congress's
race.
action, because if it's the court, it's certainly not going to get done before Barack Obama leaves office. They cannot stop it.
Well, that's why we don't want to fund the government through like next September, October. That's why you don't take funding off the table. That's why you don't unilaterally disarm yourself in these types of debates, which is what grassroots conservatives have complained about vis-a-vis folks like Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. This is going to bring up a whole series of issues with a split within the Republican Party on tactics, not so much on substance, but on tactics.
Kirsten.
Well, so there's two different audiences for this, of course. It's not surprising that the Republican base will be upset about this if President Obama does it. But the country overall, in terms of gun rights, has sort of moved more in favor of having some sort of curbs on gun rights, and which is a shift. It hasn't always been that way, and we've seen it, I think, with Hillary starting to shift how she's talking about gun rights from 2008 to now. She's much more in favor of some sort of gun control. And I think, if you look at universal background checks, that has 90% approval rating in this country. So this is not something that is really, I think, seen by most Americans as some major constitutional crisis, as I think it is going to be seen. I agree with Laura, it's going to be seen that way among the base of the Republican Party, and probably be very good for Donald Trump, if you want to look at it politically.
A national gun registry, though, doesn't have that support. And when people talk about universal background checks, that's code for a national gun registry, which is what's necessary to actually set it up. President Obama is actually getting what he wants out of this conversation, though. This entire conversation about gun control is a distraction from the real issue that makes Americans unsafe right now, and that's radical Islamic terrorism. President Obama's foreign policy is a failure. He's distracting from the failure of his foreign policy by talking about gun control. None of the gun control measures that he talks about would have done anything to stop any of the tragedies that we've seen during the last couple of years. And so this is a distraction from the real issue, which is the failure of the policy of leading from behind that summarizes Barack Obama's foreign policy.
The place where these two kind of get together, Susan, is after San Bernardino. On the one hand, Kirsten is right that on some issues like a background check, people generally favor that. On the other hand, there was an explosion in gun sales after San Bernardino because people are afraid. And even I saw a report on the news today that after news of the executive action, there was a gun show out in Virginia and people were there like more than usual to buy guns because they're worried that their guns are going to be taken away or they won't be able to buy new guns.
And just to be clear, we don't know precisely what President Obama is going to propose. I don't believe he's proposed a national gun registry to date. There were some cases, including in the Morgantown case, where the lack of a background check had in effect a convicted felon bought a gun that he used to kill 4 people through Facebook, not subject to a background check. That aside, I think the politics has gotten incredibly complicated because, as Kirsten said, 9 out of 10 Americans support universal background checks. On the other hand, there was a poll about a month ago that showed a plurality of Americans think we'll be safer if we got more guns rather than restricted guns more. So people, I think, are divided on this issue. I would look not for what President Obama does. I would look for what Hillary Clinton does because she's running for election. She hopes to be running for president. Does she continue to lean forward into this issue in a way that Democrats have not done for about a generation?
I was going to say, it's a good issue for a Democrat in a primary, particularly against Bernie Sanders, who's more conservative on guns. No, it has not, at least since 2000, been a good issue for Democrats.
Because the intensity of support is with people who oppose new restrictions on guns, even when a majority of Americans support some of those restrictions.
Crime has gone down across the country. There have been spikes in murder rates. Chicago, they just released statistics, 50 more murders than in 2014. Most strict anti-gun jurisdiction in Chicago. The 90% statistic of all supporting background checks, that's been debunked. Lots of the myths about gun ownership are perpetrated by people who never much liked the Second Amendment in the first place and who have a vested interest in amassing more power in Washington, D.C. This is about power. It's not about liberty. It's not about keeping people safe. Columbine is the only thing they can point to that would have been changed with gun control, and that was a transfer of a weapon that was illegally modified under the '94 assault weapons ban. Newtown wouldn't have been stopped. Gabby Giffords wouldn't have been stopped. Aurora wouldn't have been stopped. Navy Yard wouldn't have been stopped. So you're going to hear a lot of powerful rhetoric from the president. But when you dig down into the facts and the peer-reviewed study, it's on the side of the gun owners in the Second Amendment.
All right. Meanwhile, the 2 frontrunners in the 2016 race, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, have continued their battle over the women's issue. And Donald Trump this week upped the ante considerably. Take a look.
I don't know that he has any boundaries at all. And his bigotry, his bluster, his bullying have become his campaign.
She wants to accuse me of things, and the husband's one of the great abusers of the world? Give me a break. Give me a break.
Michael, wise or not to get back into Bill Clinton's personal history?
Well, look, if Hillary Clinton's going to put Bill Clinton out there and have him campaign for her, then nobody's claiming that Hillary is responsible for his misdeeds. But if she's putting him out there as a spokesperson, then it's certainly going to be an issue. And I think one of the most exciting things is that you see for the first time this cycle the Republican Party willing to be on offense on moral issues. You have Rand Paul in New Hampshire, who's saying that if the Democrats want to come up with every single obscure instance of abortion and quiz us on that, we're going to ask Hillary Clinton why she supports the abortion of a 7-pound baby. You have Ted Cruz leading the fight on religious liberty, saying that regardless of what you think of the Supreme Court case this past summer, it's absurd to say that a 70-year-old grandmother should be forced to bake a cake. And I think that if Hillary Clinton wants to put Bill Clinton out there as one of the leading advocates for her presidency, it is valid to point out that there is nobody who's done more to degrade women or the office of the President of the United States than Bill Clinton.
How do you think that works, Susan? I mean, there are even some liberal columnists this week who said he's fair game, and they also questioned Hillary Clinton and the fact that in a lot of these cases she may have enabled Bill Clinton because she ended up attacking the women who made allegations about Bill Clinton.
So Ruth Marcus, our friend Ruth Marcus, made this point. I think it's fine. I think it's fair game to talk about Bill Clinton. Is it smart politics? I think probably not. Didn't we see this movie before in 1998 when Bill Clinton himself was the figure at the center, not his spouse, got impeached, contributed to historic Democratic gains in the 1998 midterms. So I think Donald Trump should feel free to attack him, but I question whether this is going to rebound to his benefit in a general election where independent-minded women, including moderate Republican women, may be in play and a key to the election.
Juanita Broderick, Paula Jones, these are real people. Their lives were forever changed. Monica Lewinsky. Juanita Broderick actually claims that Bill Clinton sexually assaulted her. I interviewed her in years past. Contemporaneous corroboration to what she went through. These are real people. Now, we have a lot of feminists out there watching, I think, a few at least, and they care about women. I'm not saying this is going to be the focus of the campaign or necessarily that it should be, but the idea that somehow Bill Clinton is such a vaunted figure that he should be taken off the realm of possible subject matters and discussion. He's going to be the co-president. He's going to be the most trusted advisor of Hillary Clinton, and matter of speaking, a former president of the United States. It's not going to be the focus of the campaign, but the idea that, oh, you can't talk about this. My question is, why aren't other Republican candidates making the speeches of the Clintons, the amassing of the wealth through the Clinton Foundation, possible use of influence from other countries trying to donate to the Clinton Foundation? These are real topics. The other issue is going to be brought up, but it shouldn't be some like, oh, black box you can't go into.
All right, finally, I cannot let this pass. Let's put this up. Carly Fiorina tweeted this on New Year's Day. Love my alma mater, but rooting for a Hawkeyes win today. Now, here's the backstory. Fiorina went to Stanford University, good school. It just so happened that very same day, Stanford was playing the Iowa Hawkeyes in the Rose Bowl. 2 footnotes. Stanford crushed Iowa 45-16, and on Twitter, I'm told by people who understand these things, there were 2 items trending later that day. One was pandering, and the other was #CarlyCurse. As a proud graduate of Stanford, Michael, your thoughts?
Well, it was pandering, and I think it reminds people that a lot of Republican establishment politicians love throwing their base under the bus to try to appeal to a new constituency, and that's what she did. I think people want politicians who are willing to speak truth. The truth is that Stanford proved they should have been in the BCS playoffs. The truth is that Christian McCaffrey should have won the Heisman Trophy.
Oh,
I got an Alabama pin on. Look at my Alabama pin.
Carly should have been tweeting, "Go Tree."
Go tree. I mean, I have to say, I find it odd that the big insignia is a, what kind of a tree is it?
It's a California redwood. It used to be the Indian before political correctness. But remember, in 2008, Rudy Giuliani came out and said he was supporting the Boston Red Sox in the World Series.
Hillary, White
the
Sox,
biggest Yankee fan in the world.
Yeah,
So.
All right. Yeah. On that important note, we have to take a break here.